Hello and welcome to The Wrap with Kate McCarthy. Thanks to Coates, I'm Sarah, Olle and Kate. A big day for you. As I can see, the scarf is on and the Kate Hoare t-shirt. Well, you had to simply wear it today on the back of the results. They were stunning, particularly for you.
Oh, well, what a weekend of footy. Kate Hoare dominated. The flag has got up. It doesn't get much better for me on the bandwagon of things, does it? It was a huge win. In the early game to Melbourne, that was a cracking contest, Sarah, and then the flag as well. The flaggers are up and about.
And it brings us to two huge preliminary finals. As we know, North Melbourne had the week off, so too did Brisbane. And I feel like these are the four best teams left in it, Kate.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think coming into the finals, probably would have had those pegged as the teams to beat. Obviously, North Melbourne. It was weird having a weekend without North Melbourne playing, wasn't it? It was so even. But they are awaiting the Ds now after that win. And then Carlton will go up to Brisbane, and we'll preview that one a little bit later because there's some recent history in that matchup.
So earlier this evening at Icon Park, the Blues, far too good for the Hawks in the end, running out 46-point winners. And Kate, this was from the word go, from the first siren. You could just tell that Matthew Buck's Chargers, they were on.
They were absolutely on. 7 individual goal kickers. There were highlights galore, particularly in that first term. But Dana Finn, she kicked another 2 goals. But it was their ball use from Q1 all the way through, but their just ability to cut teams up by foot. So
beautiful
they
to watch.
Find a mark, and in their back half, they're really careful with their ball use. If they see an option, they take it back through the corridor. They're brave, they're bold, and when you're brave and bold, you hit the scoreboard like they have. 11 goals, 13, 79 points in that game. Their equal biggest win of the season with 49 points, and a prelim awaits them now.
So at quarter time, the Hawks, they were 31 points in arrears, and their coach, Dan Webster, he was not too happy. As we can see here, they are getting an old school bake, Kate, at the first change.
Yeah, they were. And I think as a coach, you probably have 1 or 2 of these in you for a season. And we haven't seen this a whole lot from Dan Webster. And it was clearly needed, and I think it was absolutely the correct approach. Yep. If we have a look at the Q1 numbers, though, for the Hawks, this is why it was needed, because the discrepancies were huge. The contested possession to start with, so plus 14 to the Blues in that first term. They controlled the game through their marks, through their clearances. In those inside 50s, 18-3. To be fair, the damage could have been bigger. 4 goals, 7 to zip. But Dan Webster, obviously the damage was done. They did respond in the second term, which is positive from a coaching perspective when you do roll out one of those and you get a response from your team. But it was just a little bit too late when the other team had piled on 31 points to nothing.
And for the second season in a row, the Hawks, they go out in straight sets. This was their coach, Dan Webster, post-match.
I was lost in the first quarter. They were electric in the first quarter, but we were so far from it. And that's the most disappointing thing when, it's a big final and they got in a roll and we weren't able to stop it. And then, we battled the game out well after that. We did some good things, but all the damage was done there. I honestly think if we're close to full strength, we can, compete with anyone. We just haven't been close to that, especially the back half of the year.
So not mincing his words there, Dan Webster, and we will get to the injury component for Hawthorn in just a little bit. But it is tough, Kate, when you go out in straight sets, and not for the first time. This is something that Hawthorn experienced last year, still yet to win a final.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a different narrative to what we saw last year. I think a lot of the narrative around the Hawks last year was that they did have an easy run into the finals. Yep. They were a kick away, though, arguably, from winning both of those finals, and they were a little bit further off it this time, but I think the circumstances around it are a little bit different. We will get into their injuries, which Dan Webster alluded to, but you can't help but think how different this game could have been if they rolled out what they did in the second quarter from the start and put a little bit of pressure on the Blues. What could they have gotten out of it? But the way that the Blues were able to really dominate that first quarter just made it pretty smooth sailing for them from that point on.
And one of the stars for Matthew Buck's side, it's got to be Mimi Hill. She was irresistible this evening, absolutely everywhere, and her gut running, Kate, was a real aspect of this.
Yeah, it was. 27 disposals, 12 of those were contested. She had 9 score involvements, 450 metres gained and a goal to go with it. But Mim was everywhere out there. She was covering every square inch of Icon Park. She didn't get a whole lot of attention from the Hawks despite having,
Curious that.
I think, 11 disposals in the first term alone, which probably would draw the attention of some of the defenders. But this here, look at these second efforts. So goes once, goes again, lays a huge tackle, which then actually leads to a shot on goal, which does bring us to breaking down Mim Hill's game a little bit more, which is going to get us to educate. So let's have a look at a couple of those plays that we just saw and the gut running that is involved from Mim Hill and her ability to, one, run past Hawthorn players that don't seem to be paying her a whole lot of attention, but just her ability to get from one contest to the outside, to be used by her teammates to start with and then deliver the ball inside forward 50. So she is really that inside to outside runner for Carlton, and she's the link between sort of back half and front half. But this is sheer work rate from her. Stays involved, stays in the play, doesn't get used there. So make sure she gets to the next contest. If she still can't get used there, which she does eventually, hits the scoreboard. So by fronting up to every contest possible, that's why she gets 27 disposals, why she has 450 metres gained. And just again, this play that's on the end of all of this forward uphill running, she can run back as well and lay the defensive pressure. So Mim Hill, hats off to her. Buried a sausage the last 2 weeks around Icon Park, and it's clearly worked for her. It's brought the luck. Apparently, it brings luck. I think it's an Irish tradition.
What flavour do we reckon? If it's Irish, I don't know.
Well, it wouldn't be a bratwurst or anything. That's a bit more German, but yeah, it's working for them.
Keep digging those snags. And speaking of snags, Mia Austin, she kicked 2 of them today. This is a young developing forward for Carlton. We know she came in last week and had a really emotional goal on the back of her cousin's tragic death, Kate, and she was very handy today.
She was, and I think all season, yes, they've played around with Poppy Scholes playing forward or back, but before they made that move permanent, they were looking for another key to really stand up, and they'd tried Mia Austin. She'd been emergency for, I think, 6 or 7 games this season, so was really trying to crack into the side, but her performances the last 2 weeks and her ability to show what she can do in a couple of really clutch games this season, I think would absolutely please Matthew Buck and the coaching staff, because they've been able to find her best footy later in the season, and having Scholes and Bohanna in a forward line against a very strong defensive unit in the Lions, that's going to be a tantalising matchup for that prelim. But just quickly on players that are like Mia Austin that we see at the Blues. So the ability for Matthew Buck to just get the most out of his list. So Amelia Villado, Maddie Hendry, Dana Finn, Yaz Dersma, Lily Goss, Harriet Cordner. These are all players that in the last 3 or less seasons under Matthew Buck have started to find their best football and their development there. They've started to really develop these core players, and their depth is well and truly on display now. They're not relying on Mim and Abby. Yes, they're the cream on top, but it's all of these role players that are contributing to the success. So has to be said how well the Carlton program has been able to get the most out of these players.
And you add in Sophie McKay, who's in her first year. She was just sensational again. 3 goals and 16 disposals today. And we've become accustomed to some pretty fun celebrations, haven't we? And she pulled out a new one this evening, Kate.
Yeah, it was the shoulder dislocation into the shimmy. She did give word to her father that it was coming this week, because her father had an absolute conniption last week when she pulled out the
hamstring
hammy celebration. And then there was a combined celebration between her and Abby, because it was Abby's birthday. So this is the one, this was Abby's goal. So she got in on the party as well.
Oh my gosh.
So it was the birthday cake celebration. Soph said post-match that she had to actually call out to Abby because Abby forgot. I actually do not know how she remembers these things. So going into games, I'd always think, oh, if I kick a goal, I'll do this. If I kick a goal, well, she doesn't have to worry when I kick a goal. But I'd always forget. Like, you'd always just be so caught up in the moment. Soph doesn't forget anything.
When's your birthday?
It was a couple of months ago. So
we'll have to bring it out next year, the old cake celebration. Hey, it's been tough going for Hawthorn this year, particularly on the injury front. And I'm just wondering, Kate, given these names and given some of the players that did feature today under injury clouds, Do we give them an out?
You give them somewhat of an out for sure because of the tall stocks to start with. So Emily Everest, Bridie Hipwell, Ainsley Kemp, who plays a lot taller than she is, Ellie Simons and Lucy Wales. They are all tall players that play either a role in the ruck or play a huge defensive role for for the Hawks. And when you lose that many, I think we really saw the aerial dominance from Carlton on display. Losing Lucy Wales, she's, for me, the best defensive ruck in the competition. She doesn't only get it done in the ruck, she plays such an important defensive role. Think Darcy Cameron when you think the Pies for the men's side. She plays such an important role for the Hawks, so losing her. But then it seemed like the ruck role was cursed. Every player that went in there trying to replace her. Then you've also got Mac Erdley, who's usually a really strong defender, playing in the ruck today because Ellie Simons was also injured. It's just that ability to compete in the air is something, when you're out sort of worked, you can kind of cop that. But when it's sheer height that you can't defend, that's something that's a little bit harder to replace. And Eliza West, who was arguably their best midfielder in the first half of this game, then was out with concussion for pretty much the whole of the second half. So every time they could ill afford to lose another player, they did. Jazz Fleming played the whole game as a forward because she couldn't I argue that if this wasn't a do or die game, Jazz Fleming doesn't play. Same with Anya McDonough to some extent. Emily Bates, the fact that she even played this game
Remarkable.
Was phenomenal considering her injury. So you've got to give them some leeway for that as well.
Let's get to the other semi-final, which was the first at Icon Park today. This was a game of swinging momentum. In the end, Melbourne, 11-point winners over Adelaide. Where does it sit for you, Kate, in terms of games of the year?
Well, there's been some really red-hot games of football this year in AFLW, but none probably with this on the line, a do or die. So for me, this is the best game of the year that we've seen. It was all tied up at three-quarter time, and then my favourite player stepped up. But we'll get to that soon. It was a huge performance from Melbourne, and they'll take a lot of momentum out of this win. I think one of their best performances for the year, but the Crows, I think their best performance for the year by quite some way. And they pushed them all the way to the end. An emotional mixed-near post-match, which was lovely to see. Obviously, commiserations for the Crows because they are clearly out now, and we'll get to Doc Clark in a moment. But it was a huge game at Icon Park and was one that was probably, the best game of the year.
Let's get to our player of the round. Thanks to Coates. And she's on your T-shirt, Kate. Another Kate, the skipper, Kate Hall.
Oh, well, we may as well just let the pitchers do the talking for this because I'm going to struggle to find the words. 26 disposals, 7 marks, went back at times and played a really key role as a +1 defensively. This clash between Kate Hall and Ebony Marinoff was one for the ages. Loved it. Neither player took a backward step, and then this clinical finish. My wife actually thought something was wrong in the house and there was emergency when I went nuts over that goal. But she did it all. She was the first player in AFLW Finals history to have 25 or more disposals and kick 3 goals. It was an all-time performance for an all-time person, an all-time player, Kate Hall.
She's so classy, isn't she? And at quarter time, our colleague Nat Edwards was speaking to Mixtoneer and asking what this little interaction was, because after speaking to the group, he went and spoke to his skipper, and he said, basically, I just went and said thank you, because she'd been doing everything forward for us, but then when Adelaide started to get their run on towards the end of the first quarter, she was the one who went back and intercepted 3 in a row. So, I mean, really, you could have 3 Kate Halls across every line, couldn't you?
Do you think there's an argument now, Sarah, for the best player in the game? There's a lot of talk around Jazz Garner, and maybe because we didn't see her this weekend, we've got the recency bias of Kate Hall. But for me, those 2 players, throw in your favourite, Ella Roberts as well.
Thank you. Let's not forget her.
Those 3, it's hard to work out who is number 1 on the podium there with Jazz Garner, Kate Hall and Ella Roberts. They are 3 of the best players in the competition.
And it's all about big moments in finals, isn't it? We saw it from Kate Hall, but we also saw it from her teammate in Talia Gillard. And some rundown tackles today were simply sublime and inspiring to teammates.
They were, and we've come to know her for that part of her game, her intercepting, which we'll see here, and her ability to work off her opponent one-on-one and take a grab. But you're right, it was the stuff that she was doing almost at ground level that was the most impressive. This one to start with, the chase down and just laying that tackle, do or die. And then this one, this was absolutely massive. The game was essentially done at that point. But just laying that, and is that a little bit of a changing the guard? Because that's what we're used to Chelsea Randall doing. Chasing down as that loping defender. But Talia Gillard, the way she's worked into this season, had a lot of injury into the sort of start of the season, had to work through a fair bit of adversity to get back. And just each game, she's found another level and another level in the last 2 weeks. She has been so pivotal to Melbourne.
Time now for new kids on the block.
Well, it's Riley Wotherspoon in her second season. Her 2 finals have been 2 of the best games I have seen her play in her young career. She had so much impact this afternoon. She had 10 disposals, 4 marks, 1 goal, 1 and 5 score involvements, but she's just starting to really find what her role is. That mark at the end of the game was huge from her, but the small forward, the hybrid forward role is sometimes a really hard one to work out and to know where to go with it. And she is someone that you can see over the last couple of weeks and back half of this season particularly has really thrived in it and has started to work out where she can play her best footy and how she can play her best footy. And we know sometimes finals aren't the easiest games to step up in. And for the fact that her last 2 weeks have been 2 of her best games, that holds her in such good stead for the rest of her career.
Props to Maggie Marnie as well. 2 goals. I thought she was really clean and clinical today.
She was, and her finishing in front of goal was huge. A couple of very important goals, but you're right. In finals, if you're one-touch players, you sort of stand out, and Maggie Marnie did announce herself this afternoon.
So the D's were red hot out of the gates. They kicked the first 2 goals, and you thought, they look like the team that really did finish second on the ladder. They should get this one pretty easily. But in the second term, it was kind of a one-way traffic in the other direction. Adelaide kicking 5 goals to 1. Some of these goals are coming off questionable free kicks. And this 50-metre penalty, Kate, what did you think?
Yeah, that's not 50 to start with. That's not even a free kick. It's just the mark play on. There's not 50 there to start with. But I got a little sense of deja vu, Sarah, watching this, because it was the second term last week. This one here, in my opinion, also not a free kick. Amy Boyle-Carr actually initiates that contact. Paxi has every right to sort of defend herself. But the reason we had deja vu, the 3 goals against the Lions in the second term all came from free kicks. So for me, these weren't untidy. I don't think there's much to clean up because I don't think they were actually there. But it was more to highlight that little turning in momentum. And if you're giving away free kicks, you guarantee 2 free kicks in a term to North, they're going to make you pay. So they need to tidy up that side of things to try and get a bit of momentum back in the game at times.
So Adelaide out of the final series, and that's all she wrote for their coach, Matthew Clark. Doc is now retired, or at least he is for this little part of coaching. 92 games, 8 seasons and 2 flags, and he was reflecting on it all post-match.
This year became a bit of a circus because we talked about it being my last year, but I've just enjoyed it immensely, and I would reflect on not only this year but every year that I've been fortunate enough to be the coach. Has just been a tremendously enjoyable experience, and we've chased success really hard, but we've been able to do that while still looking after people and building a culture that we're pretty proud of.
And Doc Clark could be proud of building that culture as well. Mick Stanier, Melbourne coach, was really glowing in his endorsement of Doc post-match, saying that Adelaide is a side the D's have been chasing for the best part of a decade. And you can see here how loved he is with all his players giving him a big hug, Kate, post-match.
Oh, he certainly is. He's extremely loved. He's extremely loved by the whole AFLW community, really. You'd struggle to find anyone that doesn't have nice things to say about Doc Clark. The 2 premierships, as you said. I mean, they won the first flag, dipped off a little bit in their second season, and then Doc Clark really got this team back to the juggernaut that we've seen across the whole 10 seasons of AFLW. But yeah, you just have this feeling within the group that it's just a group that values culture and respect so highly. And I think he is the person at that group that really sets that standard. You look at the players, Ebony Marinoff, Chelsea Randall, Anne Hatchard. There's never any real questions about their respect for the game, their respect for their club, and that just seems to be blanketed across the entire club at the Adelaide Football Club in their AFLW program. And Matthew Clark has to be the key leader in that element.
A legacy he can truly be proud of. But let's get to prelim weekend, baby, because there are 4 teams vying for the flag. The 2025 Premiership, Kate. North to take on Melbourne, and then Brisbane to take on Carlton. I'm excited for both these games, particularly the latter, just given what the Blues did to the Lions earlier this season.
Yeah, it was round 3, and it was probably the win that kind of announced Carlton. We saw them round 1. They did a great job against Collingwood. We saw that bold ball movement, and we were so pumped for it. And then they were able to, I mean, the Hawks, when they had them in round 2, wrestled back a bit of momentum, but getting the win over the Lions in Brisbane gave them so much credibility. And then we look at the first prelim final, and I remember sitting here probably a month ago saying how disappointing it was that we weren't going to see North and Melbourne
We've got it.
match up in the home and away season. So we've just left it for the second last weekend of the year. 2 massive prelim finals, and they're going to be blockbusters in their own right.
Let's be honest though, you are hoping it's a Flaggers v Kate Hall grand final.
I actually don't, because I don't know who I'd go for. I'd be quite torn, but hopefully we see another. I mean, 25-3. Can Kate Hall get 30 and kick 4 next week? I think it's going to take that if they need to beat North Melbourne.
Hey, if they're both in, you can't lose. And
That's
you can't
it.
lose when you watch the wrap either with Kate McCarthy. Thanks to Coates. We're down to 4 sides. We'll see you this time next week.